We're back in the kitchen. Today we're going to make bread. We're going to make loaf bread, rolls, and cinnamon rolls out of one recipe. So, it'll be a little mixed up probably, but what we're going to do is we're going to get started with our dough first. And then once that has risen, it'll be split off and I'll go through the process of making loaf bread, cinnamon rolls, and rolls. So what I want to go through first is this yeast process because we're kind of in the middle of that at this point. What I do, because this recipe says to heat your water to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. I can never get that correct. So what I do is I put a half a cup of water in a bowl and I heat that in the microwave for 1 minute. Then I add 1.5 cups of tap water. That is the perfect temperature for rising your yeast for your bread. Then from there I add 2/3 cups of sugar and 1.5 tablespoons of active dry yeast. I just use the rapid rise instant yeast. And so that is now in the process. And you really may hear my timer go off in this video, but I'm going to let this continue to rise before we continue. So we'll be back. Okay, so this yeast and sugar has been sitting for 10 minutes. Can you see how it's frothy, how it's foamed up? That's what you have to wait for. So that is ready. That's been sitting for 10 minutes. So then we're going to add 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. We're going to add 1.5 teaspoons of salt. So this is a 1/2 teaspoon, so I'm going to use 3 of these. We're just going to stir this up. Now, I'm going to move this to this bigger bowl, and to be honest with you, I'm not sure this bowl is going to be big enough, but we're going to go with it and see how it works. Get all that yeast goodness in there. Okay. Now, so what we do from here, we're going to slowly add 1 cup of flour at a time to this yeast mixture, stirring it up. We might not use it all. This calls for 5.5 to 6 cups. I have already measured this flour out, but I'm going to show you the proper method of measuring. So you want to spoon into your measuring cup. So I'm using a smaller one that keeps it from packing in. Get that on there. And then I take a knife. You want to make sure there's air in it. And then you take your knife and you level that off and you scoot off anything extra. So we're going to add that. And I'm going to go ahead and add probably, it says 1 at a time, but listen, I'm a stickler for moving on. So we're going to put 2 in there at this point. And we're just going to start stirring this into the yeast mixture. I love a yeast bread, dough, yeast dough, biscuits, whatever. To be honest with you, I rarely make yeast bread, yeast rolls, just for the simple fact that Sister Schubert, Riches, and Rhodes make some really good rolls. I got a fork that my flour's wanting to bunch up in there, so I don't like how that clumps up. So that was 2 cups of flour. We're going to keep moving. Again, I'm going to stick my knife in there and we're going to level that off. So that's 3 cups. Let's stir that again. There's nothing more comforting to me than yeast bread. I like bread just a little bit too much. I have to think about this, so okay, so that's 4 cups. starting to get a little bit thicker. It really is just the consistency of a good gravy right now. So we know it's going to have more flour. I'm going to get this off of here. Now, sometimes your recipe will call for sifted flour. And if it does, then somebody has already tested that and it'll need to be sifted. This one did not. I think I've done it both ways and I don't think I noticed such a difference either way. Okay, so that was 5 cups and it says 5.5 to 6 cups of flour. This is still way too thin. Do you see that? That's way too thin to roll it out, to be able to even knead it on the paper. So I'm going to go ahead, put this last little bit, and then we're going to get some more because that's not going to be enough. I really think it'll come near being closer to 6. That makes it almost 6 cups in this bowl. Yeah, that's going to make it easier to knead. You see that? It's starting to pull away from the sides. So that's going to give us a workable dough. Okay. So from here, this is where we're going to make some space. Because we're going to have to knead this. Let's get everything out of the way because this is a messy. I love dough, but it sure does get messy. So I'm going to put some flour on the counter. I love making dough though. I love the process. This is still, honestly, I'm going to put a little more flour in there because that's honestly still too soft to knead. It's going to have to, I'm going to have to add a lot of flour on the counter if I try to knead that. There we go. Now it's starting to. It says it'll form a ball, and you see what I'm saying? It pulls. When I pull it, it's pulling with it. So that extra flour worked. This is the magic of making bread or anything. You can follow a recipe, but you're going to have to go, you're going to have to follow instincts at some point. And if you think, I mean, honestly, if you're looking at it and you're thinking it's not gonna, you're not gonna be able to work it. Now this one, you're gonna have to keep your hands floured. And I fold it like I do my biscuits to start with. And then it's gonna call for kneading. So kneading is pulling it and pushing it. Pulling and pushing, pulling and pushing. You're basically working, use the heel of your hand, and you're going to push it, you're going to pull it and push it. And that's breaking down all the gluten in the flour. This is what makes a really soft dough. This recipe actually says to knead it for 5 minutes. I don't know. I'll be honest, there's not many recipes that I've ever used that I wound up kneading it for 5 minutes. I think I don't have the patience for that, but we'll keep working on it. I don't know that I'm going to keep you on here for 5 minutes while I do that. You can see, I mean, I'm not having to add any more flour at this point. Now, the one way I usually know that a dough is ready and I can move on is just keep your counter flour because it will get sticky. When your dough, when you touch it, it feels like a baby's belly. It's kind of soft, but it bounced back. You kind of know it's about ready. So the kneading process, again, with anything else, depends on the kind of flour you use, the kind of yeast you use, how much stirring you did in the first part of the process. So I'm going to say she's ready. This is ready. So what we do from there is I have a bowl here and I put a little bit of vegetable oil on there. So you put that in and then flip it over so it's kind of coated. As you can see, it's kind of got a coating of that vegetable oil. We're going to cover this just with a clean cloth, and it's going to sit until it doubles in size. That's usually going to take about an hour or an hour and a half. We're going to let that rest while I clean up this mess, and then we'll be back. Okay, I know this yeast roll dough is a lot of steps, so far we'll recap and we'll do that again. We started out with some water and yeast, and we added sugar and let that brew, whatever you want to call it. The yeast has to rise, it has to activate, that's the word. And then that takes about 10 minutes, and then from there we added our oil to that and salt, and then we started adding in our all-purpose flour. We got that to a point through stirring and kneading, and then we put that in a bowl to rise. This has been rising for about an hour. That again all depends on your kitchen, depends on the temperature, depends on where you put it, but that has pretty much filled up that dough. So what you're going to do from here, now from here we're going to make, this is just a basic loaf bread recipe. Makes 2 loaves of bread, but for today I'm going to make 1 loaf of bread, make some dinner rolls, and we're going to make some cinnamon rolls, just so I can show you how versatile this dough can be. So here you're going to get to punch down. So basically all you're going to do is punch in the middle, I don't know why, and then you're going to pull it from the sides. You're going to pull this dough from the sides. It's going to come out of the bowl, and we're going to cut this in half, because like I said, we're going to use half of it for a loaf. So we're going to cut this dough in half. Okay, that simple. You're going to form this into a loaf the best you can. If you need to get some flour and put on your hands, you can. But the bottom line is just tuck all your seams. That's going to sit in your loaf pan just like that. For this recipe, we don't cover this. Now this is going to rise again. It's going to double in size. So with this other half, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it in half again, because I'm going to use half of this to make some rolls. So you can cut it, honestly, or you can break them off. Break them off, roll them up, put them on your pan. That's really all you're going to do to make some rolls. You can use flour. They're just a little bit sticky, but not so much. Now we will probably use flour when we start doing the cinnamon rolls, just because. So I'm going to get these on here, on this pan. Once we're all finished, I can kind of give you the numbers if you wanted to use the dough just to make rolls or just to make cinnamon rolls. You'll know about how many. So far we have a loaf of bread ready to rise, and we have 7 rolls. Now these could probably, honestly, if you like them bigger, you can make them bigger. So this is I'm gonna sit this over here. That's gonna rise. That has to rise double in size. Okay, so now I'm gonna get ready to roll out the cinnamon roll dough. So I've put a little bit of flour on the counter. Then I had to locate my dough roller. I don't use it very often. And Mr. P has been home during this pandemic, and he has been wonderful about washing dishes and things like that. But honestly, I'm having trouble finding things. So with this dough, so what we're going to do is try to get it into a rectangle the best we can, and you want to move it around so it doesn't stick to your counter. Okay, just kind of keep it moved around. This doesn't take a whole lot of rolling. Get it in the best way you can. Get it in a triangle the best way you can. It won't be exact, or mine is never exact, but we try. It's getting a little sticky. Okay. This is not going to make a lot because, like I said, this is part of the entire dough recipe. So, what we do from here is I melted a little bit of butter. Now, it's not real thin. It's still kind of solidified, but it's enough that it is brushable. We're going to brush this entire little thing with this melted butter. This is about half a stick, so that would be a quarter of a cup. Yeah, because a stick is a half a cup, so that'd be a quarter of a cup of butter. And I'm going to use all of this. I'm going to brush all of this on there. And you can see it's not melted all the way, so it's not actually like running off of the dough. So, we'll do that. And then brown sugar. You can use granulated sugar, but to be honest with you, I like the flavor of brown sugar better. Measurement-wise, I don't know, I'd be afraid to tell you. I'd say you're probably going to wind up using about a cup. Maybe a cup. And you're just going to spread that out over the butter mixture. And I like to kind of pat it in just a little bit, pat it down. And then from there, we're going to put cinnamon. And I like them to taste like cinnamon rolls. So, I mean, you know, you don't want it bitter with cinnamon, but you want to taste it. So you're probably looking at a good couple of tablespoons overall. Okay, so from there, so I have this rectangle and it is longer this way and shorter that way. Let me adjust just a little bit, see. You can see. Okay, so it's longer this way, shorter this way. So we're going to start from this side and roll that way. And so you just use your fingertips. You're going to fold that edge over. So now when you start rolling it, you also want to tuck it as you roll it. And just do it real gentle because this is dough and it will tear. And you're trying to not tear it. So you're just going to keep rolling and tucking all the way down. Okay? Roll and tuck. Roll and tuck. Okay. So there we go. So we have this roll, and I like to flatten my ends the best I can. Now, for this part, I mean, honestly, I have used thread. You can pull thread under it and then cross it over, and that slices it real well. I find it just about as easy to just use a knife and slice it. So for what we'll do, and so they're all even, we're going to cut it in half. Put a little bit of flour on there. We're going to cut it in half, and if you'll just kind of saw at it and not squish it, you'll be all right. Then we're going to cut it in half again. We're just trying to keep these uniform in size. We'll see how many we get. So we'll do each of those. We'll do halves again. And I will, once I post this video, I will post the recipe in the comments of it. So what you're going to do, can you see that? You see that? Oh, that's so pretty. So what I do is I put them on the pan and I put them touching. And where it is folded over, where you can see the fold, I put that up against the one beside it. That keeps it from unfolding when it's rising. So we're just going to go in a circle. You can put this in a circle cake pan if you want to. I just usually do this pan. So that made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That made 8 cinnamon rolls. So out of one batch of dough, we have a loaf of bread. We have 7 dinner rolls or yeast rolls. And we have 8 cinnamon rolls. You see those? So pretty. So now we start the second rising process. And this will probably take, I don't know, I'm going to say about 30 minutes because it's smaller portions. But I'll come back and show you the risen product before we bake it. So there will be lots of stops and starts. And yes, I don't wear an apron. Ask anybody that's ever worked with me. It does me no good to wear an apron because everything I touch goes around the apron. So I'm filthy either way. So I just have this older shirt, just an old shirt that I just wear around the house, and I usually grab it when I'm making things that are messy or that I worry will mess up my clothes, like permanently mess them up. So anyway, we're going to let these rise and then we'll be back. Okay, so these have been rising probably for about 30 minutes. The bread loaf is rising in the pan. The rolls have risen somewhat, and the cinnamon rolls somewhat. They just poof up a little bit. So these are going in a 350-degree oven until they're done. The bread, actually, this says to bake it for about 30 minutes. I would anticipate that the rolls and the cinnamon rolls maybe for about 12 to 15 minutes, but I'll let you know for sure. And we'll return. Okay, so we're back and our rolls are finished. Maybe too hot. They're nice and brown. I brushed them with butter, and as you can see, they are lovely. That's a lovely, lovely dinner roll. I'll eat that. And then our cinnamon rolls are done. They puffed up really nicely. And I mixed up a confectioner's sugar glaze. So this is just confectioner's sugar and a little vanilla and water. Just enough water to thin it. So we're gonna drizzle that on the cinnamon rolls. I will post the bread, the loaf of bread. I'll post a picture of that in the comments with the recipe when I get that done, just for the sake of time. I don't want to cut away and have to come back, but it's in the oven still baking. I have a small oven, so it's in there baking now. So this is the cinnamon rolls. I'll see if I can pick one up and show you how they look. They are pretty hot, actually. Let's see. Oh goodness, they're falling apart too. That is some ooey gooey goodness. So, woo, hot. See how nice that is? Okay, so that's it. So that's loaf of bread, 7 dinner rolls, and 8 cinnamon rolls out of one recipe. So I'll post that link and then I'll make some notes about it. Not a link, but I'll post a recipe, make some notes about it. And hopefully I've not had to cut away and come back too much that you can't make sense of it, but good luck.